In a quaint auto repair shop nestled on the outskirts of a serene town, a talented black mechanic dedicates his evenings to the art of car repair. When a mother in need and her son arrive at his garage with a broken wheelchair, he steps up to help without expecting anything in return, despite his own limited resources. Unbeknownst to him, this seemingly small gesture of goodwill will trigger a series of occurrences that will deliver a private jet to his front door, attract a billionaire to his establishment, and present an opportunity that has the potential to transform his life entirely. The sharp sound of tools resonated within Isaac's Auto Repair, a compact yet resilient garage located on the fringes of Brookside, a town that had always taken its time to evolve. The structure was unassuming, featuring a spacious interior beneath a metal roof that clanged in the gusty winds. Its walls were adorned with tool racks, discarded tires, and car parts in various stages of disassembly, all poised for a revival. The atmosphere was saturated with the well-known aroma of motor oil, heated metal, and the sharp tang of gasoline, a scent that adhered to every surface like an additional layer. Bathed in the soft, flickering light of a hanging fluorescent bulb, Marcus Reed, a 38-year-old mechanic, toiled with steady concentration under the hood of a weathered pickup truck. His powerful hands, calloused from years of hard work, operated with accuracy, turning a wrench against a resistant bolt. Grease stained his forearms, contrasting sharply with his rich brown skin, yet he hardly paid it any mind. This was his cadence, his refuge, where the outside world blurred and only the craft endured. The garage stood silent, save for the distant hum of passing cars, as the town gradually surrendered to the encroaching night. As the evening deepened, the majority of establishments in this part of town had shuttered their doors long before, their neon lights fading into darkness one after another, leaving behind the soft illumination of street lamps shimmering on the wet pavement. Brookside was a town where solitude reigned, where transformation was a gradual affair, and where individuals like Marcus, with skin like his, found themselves laboring doubly to earn trust, despite years of demonstrating their worth. He cleaned his hands on a rag marked with grease, ready to end the day, when a soft, uncertain knock echoed against the metal frame of the garage door. Marcus looked up, a slight frown crossing his face. The hour was advanced for patrons. A woman stood just outside the open doorway, her posture taut, her eyes darting nervously around the garage before finally resting on him. She bore a weary, weathered appearance, not from sleepless nights, but from the weight of burdens she had shouldered for far too long. Her light blue sweater bore the marks of time, and her hands clutched the handles of a wheelchair that had undoubtedly experienced more vibrant moments. In that wheelchair sat a boy no older than 10, his small frame enveloped by the oversized hoodie he wore, the sleeves draping over his hands as if he wished to disappear into the fabric. His brown eyes, wide and uncertain, flickered between Marcus and the floor, caught in a delicate dance of hope and the looming shadow of disappointment. The chair beneath him swayed gently as the woman propelled it onward, its right wheel hesitating momentarily before resuming its smooth motion. Marcus absorbed everything around him. The uncertainty in her tone, the boy's averted gaze, the battered chair. He had encountered countless shattered pieces, yet this resonated in an entirely unique way. "Excuse me," the woman began, her voice gentle, yet tinged with a familiarity that Marcus knew all too well. "Beware," the gentle approach taken when uncertainty loomed over the reception. "Is your name Marcus Reed?" He flung the rag onto his workbench and moved ahead, acknowledging with a nod. "Is that really me? How may I assist you today?" The woman let out a breath, casting a fleeting look at the boy before redirecting her attention to Marcus. "My name is Sarah Coleman, and this is my son, Caleb. For weeks now, we've been grappling with issues related to his wheelchair." Her fingers gripped the handles firmly, as though preparing for what lay ahead. "I've brought it to several locations, yet no one appears capable of repairing it." Marcus noticed the subtle pause in her voice, the words left unvoiced. No one had shown any willingness to repair it. "A woman at the grocery store remarked that you have a knack for anything with wheels," her words trailing off as she offered a tentative smile. Marcus lowered himself a bit, aligning himself with the boy's height. Caleb's eyes briefly met his before shifting away in an instant. Is that really the case? Marcus inquired softly. Would you mind if I had a glance, Caleb? The boy hesitated before responding. His fingers curled gently against the worn fabric of his hoodie. His shoulders hunched inward. After a prolonged pause, he finally nodded in agreement. Timid and hesitant, as though he were unaccustomed to inquiries. Marcus grasped the handles of the wheelchair and maneuvered it deeper into the garage, guiding it beneath the glaring overhead lights. As he examined it more closely, the situation only deteriorated. The frame had a subtle curve, the bearings had worn to the point where the wheels barely moved, and the brakes, if they could still be considered as such, were on the verge of breaking with just one more abrupt halt. He exhaled slowly, regaining his composure as he faced Sarah and Caleb once more. This isn't merely a hasty fix, he confessed, his hand grazing his jaw, yet I believe I can mend it. Sarah's shoulders relaxed, yet the strain in her expression lingered. She delved into her purse, her fingers gripping something firmly. I'm uncertain about the potential cost of something like this. But Marcus let out a breath. He had dedicated years to earning every single penny. Yet certain things? Not everything revolved around money. He gave a slight shake of his head. There's no need for concern regarding that. She blinked, evidently taken by surprise. However, no objections, he stated plainly, already retrieving his tools. The child requires his transportation. I have the resources and the opportunity. That is the only thing of importance. For a moment, Sarah simply gazed at him, as if she were attempting to unravel the hidden twist in the situation. Marcus recognized that expression from past encounters. The generosity offered by those unaccustomed to such warmth, freely given and without expectation. At last, she let out a breath, her lips gently separating. Thank you, she said, and this time her words flowed effortlessly. Marcus cast a sidelong glance at Caleb, anticipating a response, yet the boy remained silent, observing him with an expression Marcus knew all too well. A cautious optimism from one who has faced disappointment in the past. Marcus was not one to make commitments lightly, yet as he knelt next to the wheelchair, preparing himself, he felt a resolute certainty within him. He would not become yet another letdown. Marcus knelt beside the wheelchair, his fingers gliding over the cold, battered frame, exploring every dent, every scratch, every mark of where that whispered tales of hardship. With each inspection, his frown deepened further. The right wheel hardly budged, its bearing so depleted that any attempt at movement must have felt akin to forcing through thick, viscous mud. The frame was not merely bent. It was fundamentally compromised, fragile in the most critical areas. The brakes were a catastrophe, so loose they seemed almost decorative. If Caleb found himself needing to halt on a slope, he would be utterly doomed. This object was not merely aged. It posed a danger, a threat. With a deep breath, Marcus lifted himself up. Sarah gripped the wheelchair handles tightly, her anxiety palpable as if it might disintegrate beneath her grasp. Caleb remained quiet, his fingers drumming against the worn fabric of his hoodie, his gaze fixed on the ground. This thing's holding together by a miracle, Marcus said at last, his tone steady yet resolute. It's more than merely a problem with the wheel. The frame is warped, the bearings have disappeared, and these brakes. He shook his head, letting out a breath through his nostrils. This situation is just one misstep away from unraveling completely. Sarah's breath caught, a subtle shift, yet Marcus noticed it immediately. Her fingers tightened, her knuckles pale as snow. Caleb, on the other hand, responded without hesitation. His tiny hands gripped the arms of the chair, his body tensing up. His breath came in jagged, erratic gasps, as though Marcus had just knocked the wind from his lungs. No, he whispered, his voice a mere breath. His head jerked up, panic igniting in his wide brown eyes. No, you can't. He bit his lip, his voice trembling as he fought to maintain control. It mustn't be discarded. It is not possible to. Marcus felt a knot in his stomach. The sheer urgency in that voice struck a chord, reminiscent of an emotion he had encountered previously, yet struggled to identify. "I'm not discarding anything," he stated, maintaining a composed and unwavering tone. "I'm working on it, but I need you to grasp the situation. This requires more than just a temporary fix." Caleb's shoulders remained rigid, his fingers gripping the chair's arms so tightly that they quivered. Sarah rested her hand on his shoulder, applying a gentle squeeze, yet the boy remained still, his eyes unblinking. Marcus understood that type of bond. To him, it was more than a mere chair. It represented his liberation, his mobility, his connection to the world around him. The idea of parting with it, even for a short while, was simply intolerable. Marcus bent down once more, locking eyes with Caleb. "Hey," he murmured, his voice gentle. "I won't allow you to depart from here without some wheels. Understood? However, I require ample time to ensure this is done correctly. It must be robust. I always give my all." Caleb swallowed hard, lingering in uncertainty. Yet there was something in Marcus's tone that seemed to sway him. His grip relaxed a bit, and after a moment of uncertainty, he offered a subtle nod. Marcus returned the nod, then rose once more, facing Sarah. "You mentioned that you brought it to different locations." Sarah shifted in her seat, casting a quick glance at Caleb before responding. "Indeed, there are a few locations in the area, including one of the larger medical supply stores." Marcus emitted a soft scoff. "They were reluctant to engage with it, weren't they?" Her lips sealed tightly. She paused for a moment, then firmly shook her head. Marcus felt no shock. Those establishments wouldn't take the time to address an issue like this. It's simpler to suggest that people purchase a new one, but for individuals like Sarah and Caleb, who lacked the financial means, there were no alternatives available. "I even inquired about the possibility of exchanging it for a pre-owned one," Sarah confessed, her voice low and tense, a sense of shame wrapping around her words. "They declared it was beyond repair." She swallowed, averting her gaze. "What about the most affordable new option?" "It exceeded the cost of a month's rent." Marcus allowed the weight of it to settle within him. There was no need for him to inquire. He was already aware. "Text, I don't have much," she added, her voice now softer. "However, I can offer you some compensation. Simply let me know your rates, and I'll—" Marcus interrupted her with a shake of his head, cutting her off before she could complete her thought. "That's not going to work." Sarah opened her eyes wide. "What is happening? I mentioned not to concern yourself with it." He cleaned his hands with a rag and took hold of his toolbox, mentally organizing the tasks ahead. "The child requires his mode of transportation. I have the instruments at my disposal. That's everything there is to know." For the first time, Sarah appeared truly taken aback, as if she were uncertain whether to trust him. "I can't simply accept charity," she remarked, her discomfort evident as she shifted in her seat. "It's not charity," Marcus stated plainly. "It is I, carrying out my responsibilities." Sarah appeared as though she was on the verge of a debate, a flicker of uncertainty in her demeanor suggesting that she struggled to embrace kindness without the nagging feeling of indebtedness. But then she looked at Caleb, noticed the spark in his eyes, not completely bright, not yet, but just enough for a glimmer of hope to awaken once more. Ultimately, that was the decisive factor. She released a deep, wavering sigh. "Very well," she whispered. "All right," Marcus acknowledged, already maneuvering the chair toward his desk. "Do you have any plans for today?" Sarah paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. "No, however." "Excellent. Please remain patient as I focus on my task." Sarah appeared hesitant, while Caleb's hands had already abandoned the chair's armrests, his fingers nervously toying with the sleeves of his hoodie instead. Petite, anxious, yet feeling more buoyant than ever. Marcus clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing as he scrutinized the chair beneath the unforgiving glare of the garage lights. This transcended mere repair of something that was damaged. The focus was on ensuring it would never falter again. The garage resonated with a subtle cadence of labor, the consistent clink-clink of metal meeting metal as Marcus carefully took apart the wheelchair, one component at a time. Every screw, every bolt, every weathered bearing whispered tales of time, of perseverance, of the countless miles Caleb had traversed, battling against the chair's relentless resistance at every twist and turn. Under the unforgiving glare of the fluorescent light, the complete scale of the destruction was impossible to ignore. This wasn't merely wear and tear. It was a profound neglect, the sort that stemmed from a society indifferent to creating lasting value for those unable to purchase replacements. Caleb perched on an overturned milk crate close by, his legs tucked beneath the baggy hoodie, observing Marcus with wide, nearly wary eyes. Sarah leaned against the garage wall, her arms crossed, occasionally shifting her weight from one foot to the other. She felt uneasy in her seat, especially in a setting like this, and with someone like Marcus, a man whose trustworthiness remained uncertain, even in light of his apparent kindness. Marcus remained unfazed. He had grown accustomed to such things. He dedicated himself to the task at hand, his hands deftly maneuvering with intent, aligning the warped frame, swapping out the corroded bearings for a fresh set from his toolbox, fortifying the armrests to ensure Caleb could rely on them without fear of them giving way beneath his hold. Bit by bit, the chair began to reassemble, gradually evolving from a state of disrepair into a complete and unified form once more. In the initial 30 minutes, the garage was enveloped in silence, broken only by the clinking of tools and the soft rustle of fabric as Caleb moved on the crate. At last, a faint voice pierced the stillness. "What gives you the insight to resolve all of this?" Caleb's tone was tentative, as if he were uncertain about the appropriateness of his inquiry. Marcus focused intently on his task, his hands deftly tightening a bolt without lifting his gaze. "I've spent my entire life repairing and mending various things." Caleb paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "Vehicles? Vehicles, bicycles, anything that moves," he smirked slightly. "When I was around your age, I once repaired an old lawnmower for my neighbor." Caleb's eyes fluttered open. "Was it successful?" Marcus let out a soft laugh. "For roughly a week. Then the infernal device emitted smoke so intensely I feared I might ignite the entire block." A small, unexpected laugh slipped out of Caleb before he could catch it. Marcus seized it. Sarah did as well. For the first time, the child appeared to experience a glimmer of joy since entering the garage. Marcus held back. He allowed Caleb to choose if he wished to continue the conversation. A moment lingered, then, "Do you ever offer your services at no charge?" The inquiry lingered, suspended in the atmosphere. Sarah's body stiffened, her arms drawing in closer around her. Yet Caleb's gaze was elsewhere. He observed Marcus intently, anticipating the response. Marcus let out a breath, cleaning his hands with a rag as he lowered himself to meet Caleb's eyes. "May I pose a question to you? Have you ever caught a glimpse of one of those upscale dining establishments on television?" Caleb furrowed his brows. "Indeed? Have you ever noticed the way they arrange the food on the plate? Everything is arranged beautifully, with delicate drops of sauce, creating an impression of luxury." Caleb inclined his head with deliberation. Marcus leaned in, his voice unwavering. "Do you believe the prices reflect the actual cost of the food? Or is it more about catering to the clientele who can easily cover the expense?" Caleb's lips parted just a bit, yet he remained silent. Marcus inclined his head thoughtfully. "Do you understand, my young friend? Individuals often fail to price items according to their true value. They set prices based on what they believe the market will bear. And the world isn't keen on handing out freebies to people like us." His voice lowered, steady yet always gentle. "When the opportunity arises to support one another, we seize it." Caleb fixed his gaze on him, a spark of something dancing in his eyes. Comprehension, perhaps, or at least the initial steps toward it. Sarah, however, averted her gaze, breathing out unsteadily. Marcus allowed the stillness to envelop him before rising once more, seizing his wrench. He said, tightening the last bolt on the new armrest, "I repair things at no cost." The garage fell silent once more, yet this time the stillness felt at ease. Time flowed on. Marcus toiled away. Caleb observed. Just as he was about to engage the brakes, the boy's voice cut through the silence once more. "Do you think," he paused, his fingers fidgeting with the hem of his hoodie, Do you think my dad would have been skilled at fixing things? The change was slight yet instant. Sarah tensed, her gaze shot to Caleb before darting away, her jaw clenching as if the question had caught her off guard. Marcus was fully aware of it. He placed his tools aside and turned to face Caleb. I'm not sure, kid. Was he skilled with his hands? Caleb pressed his lips together, a hint of tension in his expression. I'm uncertain. Sarah swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. He left us when Caleb was 3. Marcus nodded, slowly and with deep contemplation. In that case, I would agree that he likely would have been. Caleb blinked, surprise flickering across his face as the answer registered in his mind. But then his shoulders eased, just a bit, and he glanced down at his hands, lips pressing together in a semblance of contentment. Marcus grasped his wrench once more, scrutinizing the alignment of the brakes. How about you? Are you skilled with your hands? Caleb paused for a moment, then offered a slight shrug. I enjoy creating illustrations. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Is that so? Caleb nodded, his confidence growing. Absolutely, I sketch a multitude of vehicles. Vessels of the cosmos, indeed. Marcus wore a sly grin. Now that's something truly deserving of our efforts to mend. In an instant, the child beamed with delight. Sarah, positioned by the garage wall, remained silent. Yet when Marcus looked her way, she had ceased her fidgeting. She simply observed. For the first time, she appeared to genuinely believe they were in the right place. The final bolt secured its position with a satisfying click. The last tweak has been completed. Marcus settled onto his heels, brushing the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, the sharp scent of oil and steel lingering on his skin. The wheelchair, once a worn and delicate object, now shone brightly beneath the garage lights. It was transformed. It was strengthened, stabilized, designed for endurance. It had transformed into something robust and cohesive. It was a creation designed to endure anything the world could unleash. He glided his fingers over the frame one final time, searching for any vulnerabilities. There were no instances. Finished, he remarked, nudging the chair ahead. Caleb gazed at it in disbelief, as if struggling to accept that it was the very same chair he had wheeled in just hours earlier. His fingers danced nervously along the edge of his hoodie, his breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. Marcus sensed it, the trepidation that if he reached out, it might vanish into thin air. Marcus tilted his head, encouragingly urging, "Go on, give it a spin." For a moment, Caleb remained still, then gradually, with care, he extended his hands toward the armrests. As his fingers brushed against the sleek, polished metal, a soft gasp escaped his lips. His hands glided over it, exploring the sleek surface, the secure bolts, the robust frame. He grasped the wheels firmly and assessed them once, then again before ultimately settling into the seat. As soon as he advanced, every part of him became rigid. The chair glided smoothly, without a hint of resistance. His breath caught in his throat. He exerted more force, pressing with greater intensity. The wheels moved effortlessly. Without opposition, there is no conflict. Caleb's eyes grew large with surprise. He seized the wheels, twirled, radiant, unburdened. Then laughter, unrestrained and genuine, flowed from him. It was flawless. His voice radiated unadulterated happiness. It glides effortlessly. It feels as though it's suspended in mid-air. Marcus emitted a soft laugh, folding his arms across his chest. I mentioned before, I always give my all. Sarah's hand darted to her mouth. Her breath caught in her throat. Marcus felt no need to glance. He was aware. Caleb continued to move, retreating and advancing, twirling, experimenting with the brakes through small, eager tugs of his hands. He was laughing, truly laughing, as if he couldn't contain himself. Marcus had encountered numerous pleased customers throughout his journey, but nothing, absolutely nothing, had ever resonated quite like this. Sarah dabbed at the corners of her eyes, taking a deep breath before she began to speak. "Marcus?" she murmured, shaking her head, as if the right words eluded her grasp. "I'm uncertain about how to." Marcus raised a hand. He stated plainly, "You don't owe me anything." Witnessing that grin, "That suffices perfectly." Sarah exhaled unsteadily, glancing back and forth between him and Caleb, her fingers clutching the strap of her purse with such intensity that her knuckles turned pale. Her expression held a certain rawness, revealing years of struggle, a deep understanding that the world only offers gifts when it anticipates a return. Yet Marcus made no requests. He never did. She breathed out softly, glancing away for a brief moment before returning her gaze to him, her voice a mere whisper. "Thank you very much." Marcus gave a slight nod. Caleb ceased his twirling, gazing up at him, his brown eyes still filled with wonder. "You're an exceptional mechanic." Marcus wore a sly grin. "Absolutely, I am." The night had thickened, the neon glow of the Isaac's Auto repair sign pulsating against the pavement as Marcus observed their departure. Caleb waved enthusiastically as he strolled down the street, his mother by his side, the chair gliding along with ease and grace. Marcus stood by the garage entrance, arms folded, observing them until they vanished into the shadows. At that moment it was just another task completed, another issue resolved. Yet, he remained unaware that this solitary gesture of goodwill had initiated a chain of events, something far grander than he could ever conceive. As time went on, life at Isaac's Auto Repair returned to its familiar cadence. The low thrum of engines, the sharp clatter of tools, the pungent aroma of oil mingling with hot steel. These were the elements that defined Marcus Reed's existence. The evening Caleb and Sarah stepped out of his garage felt like yet another task completed, a fleeting instance of goodness in a world that rarely offered such moments. Marcus had no expectations beyond that. Yet, transformation often sneaks up on you in the most unexpected moments. It began with a whisper. Initially, several of his loyal patrons noted having spotted Sarah and Caleb in the vicinity. "That kid's been cruising like he's got a fresh set of wheels," one of them remarked with a laugh, shaking his head in delight. A different customer, a woman employed at Brookside Elementary School, noted how Caleb navigated the halls effortlessly, no longer hindered by the faulty wheels, no longer trailing behind. "You should have seen the look on his face," she said, a grin spreading across her lips. "That boy knows no bounds." Marcus accepted it with ease, nodding and smirking to himself. Yet he chose not to linger on it. The entire purpose of making improvements was to simplify lives and ensure progress continued. However, things took a strange turn. On a brisk Saturday morning, Marcus caught the sound in the air. Profound, weighty, indisputable. Initially, he assumed it was merely another vehicle from the industrial area on the outskirts of town, yet soon it became louder and more recognizable. A deep growl, escalating into a thunderous sound, resonating through the ground beneath. He cleaned his hands with a rag, emerging from beneath the hood of the sedan he had been repairing. His brows knitted together as he looked up at the sky, squinting against the brightness of the morning sun. Suddenly, he became completely still. Gliding gracefully from above, polished and radiant, a private jet made its descent. Marcus hardly had a moment to absorb the scene before the jet's wheels touched down, stirring up dust as it landed, not at the small, barely functional airstrip across town, but on an abandoned stretch of road just outside his garage. As the jet finally came to a stop, the town was already aware of its presence. A crowd formed at a distance, whispering and gesturing, their expressions a mix of intrigue, bewilderment, and perhaps a touch of wonder. Marcus could hear someone exclaiming, "Who on earth lands a private jet in the middle of nowhere?" And another voice replied, "No clue, but they must have a significant reason for being here." Marcus, on the other hand, remained still. As he emerged from the jet, clad in a sharply tailored suit that seemed almost too pristine for the dusty environment, he exuded an undeniable presence of authority, power, and wealth. And trailing closely behind him, radiating joy, gliding effortlessly down the jet steps, in the very wheelchair Marcus had fixed, was Caleb. Marcus opened his eyes wide. What on earth was going on? The man in the tailored suit approached with intent, his shoes striking the ground with precise, confident steps, the sort of individual who didn't merely walk into spaces, he commanded them. And yet, despite the gifts he bore, there was an element in his expression that lacked the crispness of his attire. Something gentler, something authentic. Marcus felt a subtle tension rise within him, his instincts sharpening. Individuals of this sort rarely appeared in locations such as his unless they had a specific agenda. The man paused mere feet from me, extending his hand in a gesture of goodwill. Marcus perused the pages. Marcus hesitated to accept the hand. Not just yet. His gaze darted to Caleb, whose grin stretched from one side to the other, before returning to the man. Who is inquiring? The man's mouth curled slightly, as if he found the absence of instant respect entertaining. Nathaniel Coleman. He motioned in Caleb's direction. You've previously encountered my nephew. Marcus's gaze sharpened just a bit. Is that your nephew? He cast a fleeting look at Caleb before shifting his gaze back to Nathaniel. Caleb chimed in, enthusiasm radiating from his words. Uncle Nathaniel expressed a desire to meet you. Marcus breathed out deeply, at last grasping Nathaniel's hand and offering a resolute shake. Very well, he replied. You journeyed far to be here. What is the purpose? Nathaniel held on firmly, his voice flowing effortlessly. In appreciation of your kindness. Marcus raised an eyebrow. A gesture of gratitude that includes a private jet? Nathaniel let out a hearty chuckle, the sound flowing with ease and warmth. I firmly stand by the idea of going all in. Marcus folded his arms across his chest. Very well, then. I'm all ears. Nathaniel's demeanor changed, revealing a depth of seriousness beneath his effortless charm. We have rediscovered one another. Everything was revealed to me by Sarah, he stated. Your efforts to repair Caleb's wheelchair were truly commendable. You declined any form of payment and restored his independence selflessly, expecting nothing in return. Marcus gave a slight shrug. The kid simply required his wheels, and that was the crux of the matter. Nathaniel gave a slight shake of his head. Absolutely not. His gaze carried a gravity that compelled attention. What you did may seem insignificant to you, but to Caleb it means everything. For Sarah? He cast a quick look at his nephew, who seemed to radiate joy in his chair. It was of utmost significance. Marcus shifted, sensing an unusual constriction in his chest. He found it unfamiliar, this attention from others over something that, in his eyes, was simply the appropriate course of action. Nathaniel waved his hand toward the jet, and in an instant, 2 additional men emerged, bearing a sizable object swathed in fabric. They placed it before Marcus and removed the covering, unveiling a shining, cutting-edge toolbox. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He recognized precisely what lay before him, the type of equipment he had always envisioned possessing, the kind of tools that could elevate his craft to new heights. This, Nathaniel declared, is meant for you. Think of it as a token, a gesture of appreciation. Marcus glided his fingers along the sleek steel, grappling with his thoughts. He shook his head in disbelief. This is overwhelming. Nathaniel wore a sly grin. I have a different perspective. Just as Marcus was about to voice his objections, Nathaniel retrieved another item from his suit pocket, a meticulously folded document. He extended it forward. He added, There's one more thing. Ellington Industries is establishing a community grant, and you, Marcus, are the inaugural recipient. Marcus paused, grasping the paper with deliberate, cautious fingers. His gaze swept over the text, his heartbeat echoing in his mind. Financial support, growth, fresh gear, a vision of what lies ahead. Marcus gulped nervously. What makes you go through all this for me? Nathaniel rested a hand on his shoulder. Because individuals like you deserve acknowledgement. His voice carried a subtle strength, though it remained soft. When society neglects those who struggle to make ends meet, you stand firm. He nodded in Caleb's direction. That's a valuable opportunity, Caleb smiled brightly. And since you are the most skilled mechanic around, the crowd, now present, comprising neighbors, customers, and townsfolk who had come to see the extraordinary, began to murmur and softly applaud. For the first time in years, Marcus felt a profound sense of recognition. He had simply intended to repair a wheelchair. Yet, in some inexplicable way, he had transformed it all. For what felt like an eternity, Marcus remained motionless, his grip on the document firm, his heartbeat resonating in his ears like a relentless drum. The assembly that had formed near the garage spoke in hushed tones, individuals exchanging quiet words, observing, anticipating his next utterance. Yet Marcus's thoughts were elsewhere. It rested heavily on all that lay before him. A pristine, state-of-the-art toolbox, the sort he had only ever envisioned in his dreams. A financial grant aimed at enhancing his shop, acquiring superior equipment, and potentially bringing on additional help. A chance that might transform his existence if he embraced it. Nathaniel Coleman observed him intently, his gaze unwavering and inscrutable. He wasn't urging Marcus to accept it. However, he was determined not to let him dismiss it so easily. Marcus exhaled deeply, making an effort to ease the tightness in his shoulders. He had dedicated the majority of his existence to struggle, striving to validate his worth, battling against those who doubted that someone like him could possess anything of significance, and defending the meager achievements he had painstakingly earned. And now, here stood this man, this formidable and affluent entrepreneur, presenting him with an opportunity unlike any he had ever encountered. Neither a handout nor charity, but an opportunity. His fingers glided along the edge of the document. "Are you certain about this?" Nathaniel's expression eased just a touch. "If I weren't meant to be here, I simply wouldn't be." Marcus let out a breath through his nose, looking down at Caleb, who was radiating joy, his tiny hands clutching the wheels of his chair as if he might suddenly zoom away in a burst of enthusiasm. "You fixed my chair," Caleb said, his voice brimming with certainty, nearly catching Marcus off guard. "At this moment, Uncle Nathaniel is working on your garage. Isn't that how it goes?" Marcus let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head, something along those lines. He glanced over his shoulder at Nathaniel. "Are you absolutely certain there are no hidden conditions, no obscure details tucked away in the fine print?" Nathaniel's smile held a depth of seriousness beneath its surface. He stated there was only one condition: continue on your path, assisting others, embodying the person my sister and nephew already recognize in you. Marcus fixed his gaze on him for a prolonged moment, and then, with deliberate slowness, he gave a nod. "Very well," he stated, his voice steady yet resolute. "Let's get started." The audience, once silent and tense, finally exhaled in unison. Cheers echoed around the intimate assembly, hands applauding, voices softly exchanging congratulations, and a whistle pierced the air from somewhere in the crowd. Marcus grasped Nathaniel's hand firmly, an agreement forged not through paperwork and legal jargon, but through mutual respect. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Yet this time her words flowed without a hint of hesitation. "You deserve this," she stated, her voice unwavering and confident. "I trust you are aware of that." Marcus locked eyes with her for a brief moment, then offered a subtle nod. He found himself grappling with uncertainty, yet there was a flicker of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, he was beginning to embrace the possibility. As the jet readied itself for takeoff, Marcus lingered outside the garage, observing it vanish into the vast blue of the sky. Caleb gestured from the window until he disappeared from view. The sound of the plane diminished, giving way to the serene murmur of the town as it settled back into its usual rhythm. Marcus gazed at the document he held, then shifted his attention to the shiny toolbox next to him. A fresh start awaits. He never intended to alter anything. Yet one simple act of kindness had led him to this very moment, this pivotal juncture, this opportunity to create something greater than his own existence. He inhaled deeply, retreating into his garage, where the comforting aroma of oil and metal anchored him. His hands glided over the new tools, envisioning the tasks that lay before him. He had transcended the mere act of repairing cars. He was crafting a vision for what lay ahead. Come along and engage with us as we share impactful narratives by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. Remember to activate the notification bell to begin your day with deep insights and genuine compassion.